Hey there, everyone, and welcome back to Utility Sports. Today, we're going to be taking another look at the 2021 NBA draft here, giving another full first-round 2021 NBA mock draft. And this order is built off the standings. And this is a perfect time to be doing one of these mock drafts because the Minnesota Timberwolves did just jump the Houston Rockets. The Rockets are now the number one pick. I know it says Oklahoma City here. This website we are using does not have this properly filled out. Oklahoma City would not get this pick. This would stay with Houston. But instead, Oklahoma City would be picking 16 here, the pick via Miami. This is all from the Russell Westbrook trade. That's why all these picks are moving all over the place. But for the most part, these picks are right. Also, here, the Chicago Bulls do not own pick 8. This pick actually belongs to the Orlando Magic from the Nikola Vucevic trade. But we will be picking for the Orlando Magic when we get to pick 8. And today we got Austin as well here on the call. Austin, let's go into the number one pick here with Houston on the board. Obviously, they're going to be looking for a big-time player here. Who do you think that they could go with at number one?
Yeah, at the number one spot, the Houston Rockets definitely need some wing help. I think that's pretty clear and obvious. Obviously, I think that they have some nice pieces already in place with Kevin Porter Jr. as well as Christian Wood. So those are kind of your building blocks, but I think you take Cade Cunningham. I think there's a lot of teams, regardless of who is at number one, that should be looking to take Cade Cunningham. He's an all-around really good prospect. And something that really surprised a lot of us here was his ability to actually shoot the three ball in college.
Right, yeah, he shot 40% from three his freshman year at Oklahoma State. I was not expecting that. I thought he was going to be a low to mid 30% shooter. I thought he was going to come in around that 33, 34%. And he shot very consistently all year long, was up over 40% for a majority of the year, ended up right at that flat 40% mark. But I think here for Houston, you're looking at Cade Cunningham, clearly the best player on the board, and I really like what he brings for Houston there at pick number one. We move on to pick number 2, Austin, and now I'm looking at Minnesota here. This is the first time that they've been at number 2 in one of our mock drafts, and they have a wide range of needs at this point that they could go and address. Last year, they grabbed Anthony Edwards. I think that they're going to look into the front court here and grab Evan Mobley. He has a strong case to be the second best player available in this class coming out of USC. He's elite. Defensively, he can go out in space and cover. He's also really good around the rim, averaged about 3 blocks per game for the USC Trojans this season. He just declared for the draft yesterday, actually, and now the Minnesota Timberwolves in this mock draft are grabbing him second overall. Austin, what's your thoughts on Evan Mobley?
I absolutely love that. I think putting him next to Karl Anthony Towns is an A-plus move in my opinion. Obviously, the Minnesota Timberwolves need some front court help desperately. At this point, they obviously have Anthony Edwards. They have D'Angelo Russell in the backcourt, but in the front court, you have Towns and Mobley then. I think the starting five is starting to look a lot better with that pick in the fold. Hopefully, the Minnesota Timberwolves can stay up here and still make their selection rather than their pick conveying to the Warriors.
Right, that is an interesting situation as well that could play out. Remember, they had sent their pick for this year to the Golden State Warriors in that flip of Andrew Wiggins for D'Angelo Russell. If it does stay top 4, though, it does not convey and becomes an unprotected pick in 2022. Now moving on to the Detroit Pistons here at 3. They're another team that they've got a long-term question mark for their future. Killian Hayes just came back from his hip injury. Made a pretty nice pass the other night, but I'm still not very high on what he brings. Isaiah Stewart's been a little disappointing there. He's been more of a poster machine in terms of getting dunked on than anything else so far this year. For them, I think Saddiq Bey was a good selection. He's played fairly well for the Detroit Pistons. But all in all, they're going to the drawing board, and they're going to look to grab the best player available, and that's going to be Jalen Green here out of G League Ignite. I think that he's got a lot of upside when you look at what he could bring to an NBA roster. He's going to be able to put the ball in the hole. He's going to be a guy that can function off the ball as well. He's going to be a good fit next to Killian Hayes with what his playmaking presents and Jalen Green's athleticism. Now, I've got some question marks about him as well. Is Jalen Green going to be an elite shot creator in the NBA? No, I don't think so. Can he go left very well? At this point, he really can. He has to improve a lot in those areas. But there is enough raw athleticism here, and there's enough talent when he's attacking off the dribble to his right that he is still worth a top 3 pick in this year's class, in my opinion.
Absolutely. I think so as well. Obviously, that high upside, including that extreme athleticism. There's a lot of people kind of slamming their hand on the table at him going to 3 because some people do believe he is truly the best player. Obviously, in the ESPN rankings when he was coming out of high school, I believe he was number 2, then Cunningham, or was 1, and Cunningham was 2. So kind of explain a little bit more, the strengths, for Cunningham versus Jalen Green and why you would select Cunningham.
Yeah, Cunningham is just the top player in my opinion. I think ESPN got it wrong in their recruiting process. I had always looked at Cunningham as the top kid coming out of high school. And just quite frankly, he's just more capable with the ball in his hands. He's a better physical talent. He's 6'7" at that point guard spot. Jalen Green's quite a bit smaller than him. And I think Cade Cunningham's more NBA ready with his ability to read the floor. In his all-around game, he's selfless in the way that he plays basketball. He's willing to push the ball up the floor via passing it. He's got very good vision now. He's a little prone to turnovers at this point, but as he continues to grow as a passer, he's got the feel already that you need. He's just going to get better and better in that area. And I think he's a little bit more solid as a shot creator even. Some people thought maybe that would be his weakness coming in, but he showed at Oklahoma State he could get his shot off consistently in the half court. And Jalen Green, sure, he played against pros. It's a little bit tougher competition there in the G League. But at the same time, I think Cade Cunningham proved himself to be the more consistent product coming into this year's class.
Absolutely. And now we're moving on to pick 4. We have the Orlando Magic, who will be having this number 4 pick as well as the Bulls selection, which they will also be picking higher in this draft. So now at number 4, are you kind of strategic now that you have that other pick to fall back on? Does that change at all what you do here at 4?
Yeah, I think it actually does quite a bit. Based on the strength of this class from picks about 5 through 10, there's going to be more forwards available than guards, in my opinion. And Orlando's in an interesting spot. They're looking at a pretty loaded backcourt already at this point. I know that they have Markelle Fultz, Cole Anthony, RJ Hampton, all guards that they're planning on keeping for the future. But they also have Jonathan Isaac in their front court. They've got some young big men like Mo Bamba, for example. The Orlando Magic have quite a few different ways they could look. It's really between Jonathan Kamenga at this point and Jalen Suggs, the freshman out of Gonzaga. We saw how great he was during March Madness, and I'm going to opt for Jalen Suggs here. I know it's a little surprising based on what they already have in their backcourt, but they moved on from Evan Fournier. And I think with the strength of this class from 5 through 10 at the forward position, they go for their best player available at this point. They opt for Jalen Suggs. Kamenga sliding a little bit in this mock draft, but Suggs goes 4th overall to Orlando here.
Yeah, I really like that pick for Orlando. I know a lot of people are going to be saying that same thing you were kind of bringing up. You know, they already have quite a bit in the backcourt, but I mean, I don't think a guy like RJ Hampton should really prevent you from taking the best player arguably available at this time in Jalen Suggs. I know Jonathan Kamenga you think very highly of, so I feel like they're kind of in the same realm with that. But, you know, it's going to be a tough decision for the Orlando Magic moving forward. At pick number 5, we have the Oklahoma City Thunder. And they already have a couple of nice pieces on the way. They have Pokusevski, they have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, a couple of nice players, you know, to kind of build around. Where do you think they go from this current direction?
Yeah, the way the sport has fallen has really played out well for Sam Presti and the Oklahoma City Thunder because of what they already have in the backcourt. I feel like they believe Teo Maledon's going to be a long-term point guard for them. Someone who's going to probably function best off the bench. That's kind of what I had seen for him coming out of France last year. I saw him as a long-term 6-man option at that point guard spot, and I think that's really what he's going to grow into there in Oklahoma City. We know how good Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is as a guard. I think Lou Dort fits best as a shooting guard in the NBA. So here now, with what they have, Pokusevski filling out their front court, it is Jonathan Kamenga here. He is the obvious pick at pick 5, and I think he compares fairly well to Paul George, what we saw from Paul George when he came out of his class in terms of what he provides as someone who can handle the ball in the half court, has better passing touch than I expected. He really showed improvement coming from his senior year of high school into what he showed as a G League Ignite player this past year. A little bit more instincts in that area, and he's also able to get his shot off the dribble. Now, sure, he did struggle with efficiency a little bit, shot just under 40% from the field and a little bit above 30% from 3 for the G League Ignite. But I think all in all, his ball skills are there. He's got the frame, two-way versatility that you're going to be looking for. I would be absolutely shocked if he is not a top 5 pick in this year's draft.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he is a lock to be that top 5 pick. And obviously, I think Oklahoma City is making the correct decision with that pick. And now we have the Cleveland Cavaliers at number 6. A couple of interesting guys on the board. I know people are really high on Sharif Cooper. So I'm kind of interested to see how that plays out with Sharif Cooper. I know you are not high on him, but now jumping to what Cleveland has, obviously they took a Coral last year. They already have the backcourt kind of filled out with Garland and Sexton. Do you think they look at that power forward spot and really try to address that?
I really do think that is the direction that they look to go here. And I'm actually going to opt for Jalen Johnson. He's a guy with a wide range of where he could go in the NBA draft. I think his value starts around pick 6, and I think it's possible he could fall all the way down to possibly pick 20 even. He did opt out midway through the season. That kind of puts a question mark on where his value is, but he's very athletic, very versatile at that 4 position. I think he fits long-term well into what Cleveland has there. Someone who's going to be impactful on the defensive end, but most importantly can fit as an off-ball offensive piece for Cleveland. They need to have more guys who can bring some versatility into that offense. Kevin Love, over half of his field goals this year have actually been from beyond the 3-point line. They need someone who's going to be a little bit more productive inside the arc, someone who's going to be able to get to the rim, bring some athleticism into that front court. I know that Jarrett Allen's going to be there long-term, but they need to find someone who's going to be a true 4-man for them for the future.
Absolutely. At number 7, we have the Sacramento Kings. And the Kings at this spot here, obviously they have De'Aaron Fox. Buddy Hield, we feel, will very, very likely be traded probably in the offseason, I would imagine. Marvin Bagley, that whole thing has not worked out for them. So they kind of have to go in rebuild mode at this point. Obviously, Tyrese Halliburton was a phenomenal pick this past year. But now where do you go? Do you go ahead and get a wing? Do you try, maybe reaching on a center at this point? I'm kind of confused on the direction of the Kings.
Yeah, the Kings are a team with a big question mark for me, what it looks like for their future. Now, the thing is, I think that they badly need to look into the front court. But the issue is this class is just not very strong at that center position, especially in the top 10 picks. I just don't see a real center that is worth grabbing. Possibly you could see someone like Kai Jones go from the University of Texas. He played pretty well in his sophomore season there under Shaka Smart, who obviously just left for Marquette. But at this point, I think I'm going to opt for Corey Kispert. Actually played very well all year, was all college first team for basketball. I know he's a senior. Potential's not really there, but you're looking at the Kings probably taking a safe approach here, trying to find someone who fits long-term next to Tyrese Halliburton and De'Aaron Fox. I don't know what Buddy Hield's long-term future is, so they could always add some more shooting into the mix there. I think that Corey Kispert's a safe pick. I think that this is the direction the Kings would likely go. Look for them to maybe trade down on draft night, though, to try and fall back into a spot where it's more realistic to grab a center for them and also pick up some future assets in the meantime.
Absolutely. I think that's a good pick there. We figured that Kispert will be that lottery pick despite him being a senior. So I think that is interesting moving forward. Now with our next selection here, that go with the Kings pick. Now, there we go. Okay, perfect. Now we have the Orlando Magic picking at number 8. Obviously, this comes from the Vucevic trade. So now if you're the Orlando Magic, you already took Kamenga. Yeah, it was
Jalen Suggs. Jalen Suggs.
Yep. Jalen Suggs, excuse me. They won Suggs, and then now you're coming back at pick number 8. How do you complement that first pick?
Yeah, you have to look into the front court here, and this is what I was talking about. You see there's a wide range of front court players here that would fit into what Orlando would maybe like to add at this point. Zaire Williams and Scotty Barnes are the two that jump out to me as potential options. Zaire Williams, more of a positionless 4, can play as a facilitator, good in the transition game, and I think he's got some potential on the defensive end, whereas Scotty Barnes is more of that prototypical 2-way wing. He's going to function as a guy who can put the ball on the deck as a slasher, but also gives you strong physical defensive presence, something that Florida State's really becoming known as. The head coach of that program has done a great job producing a lot of different defensive products into the NBA. Devin Vassell, Patrick Williams, 2 of the latest that came out of FSU last year. And I think Scotty Barnes is the direction that Orlando would go here. They do have a history of looking at Florida State products. They grabbed Jonathan Isaac a few years back, and I think that they keep that trend up here, go Scotty Barnes, try to improve that defense while they see if Markelle Fultz and Jalen Suggs can be the offense for them moving forward.
Yeah, I love that selection, obviously, at that point. Now we have number 9. We have the Washington Wizards, and the Wizards, once again, are in a weird position. I mean, they thought they were going to really, really compete this season. Obviously, it hasn't necessarily worked out for them, and their first-round pick, Denny Avdia, from last year, has had some struggles. So now, where do you move at this point? Obviously, they don't have a center that's very viable at this point. You could also look potentially another backcourt guy as well. So this team has quite a bit of depth issues at this point. And the problem is there's just no center for them to really go. If you wanted a center this year and you're picking this high, it's not really worth taking one. Am I correct in my thought there?
Yeah, you're definitely right there. And the issue is this might end up pushing up a guy like Kai Jones. Is some of these teams up here that do badly need a center, if there's not a trade down market, maybe they just say, hey, we have to fill this position. They go ahead and pull the trigger on a guy like Kai Jones. I'm also glad you did mention the depth situation here in Washington. I think a guy like Moses Moody would make a lot of sense. He's also a very good floor spacer, can really shoot the ball as well. I think he would be a good option here for Washington, but I think that they are going to ultimately go in the direction of pulling the trigger on Kai Jones. He's got rare athletic traits at that center position. I think that many believe he'll probably grow into a solid rim protector in the NBA. The question here for Washington, do they believe in Daniel Gafford being their long-term center, or do they believe in Thomas Bryant being their long-term center? I don't think that either of those are yeses at this point. I would be surprised if management there did feel like they were. So I think Kai Jones is the pick at this point, but depending on how Daniel Gafford plays out the rest of the year with Thomas Bryant out with an injury, that could impact Washington's pick going here at pick 9.
And we saw this kind of ascension from a guy like Jalen Smith last year. If we remember, the Suns obviously they reached on him. I think he was the 10th overall selection. He was really more slotted to be, at the late teens and early 20s, but they had to kind of push forward into the lottery and go ahead and select him. So that could be that same kind of ascension with Kai Jones. At number 10, we have the Toronto Raptors, who could still make the playoffs at this point. Just a really weird season for them. I mean, they have a pretty good roster, but it's just been really odd how this season has played out for them. What do you think, best complements them for the future? Malachi Flynn was a nice selection for them last season, and now you have to kind of build on the depth, I think, at this point.
Yeah, you definitely have to. Toronto here is another team that's going to want to have a center. The only issue is there's just not centers available in this class. This is a very weak center class, in my opinion. Some people like Usman Garuba out of Real Madrid, the U18 league there in Spain. I don't necessarily like him as much as others do at this point. He's a potential piece. There'd be a little bit of a project going on with him. I do trust that Toronto would be able to develop him. However, Toronto's probably trying to get to a win now scenario at some point here. They want to be competitive. I'm sure that they feel disappointed about how their season's gone all in all. And I think that they're going to end up looking to stick in the backcourt here, actually, and go with Keon Johnson out of Tennessee. I think he's a guard that kind of gives them a little bit of a different element than they have right now. Fred VanVleet, Kyle Lowry, Malachi Flynn, all undersized guards. Keon Johnson a little bit bigger, around that 6'4", 6'5" frame, and he's physical. He can get into the lane. Now, there's question marks about his three-point shooting. Did not shoot the ball well this past year as a volunteer. But I think what he's going to be able to provide as an athletic slasher in the NBA with a good handle is going to be a nice complementary piece for Toronto at this point. They've got kind of a filled out front court in terms of what you look at the forward position with Gary Trent Jr. coming in, OG Anunoby, Pascal Siakam. They probably have to look along the backcourt if there's no true center option here. With Kai Jones already being off the board, I think it is Keon Johnson here at 10.
Yeah, really tough for the Toronto Raptors and how the draft kind of fell. Once again, there are no centers to be taken at this spot. I don't think they're going to go ahead and force their way up and take one. I don't think that's really their game in terms of an organization. So I'd like that selection. And now we have the New Orleans Pelicans, and this team desperately needs shooting. I cannot stress enough how much they need shooting. But at this point, I'm not exactly sure the direction that they want to go. They seem kind of confused in their rebuild. Obviously, they brought in Steven Adams, and that has just wrecked the spacing for the New Orleans Pelicans. I think a lot of people would agree with me on that idea. So now, obviously, they took Kyrie Lewis Jr. last year, and they have a couple of nice pieces. But do you think they go ahead and readdress that front court?
That front court is an interesting proposition there. Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, Steven Adams, kind of a weird fit. I've been very critical of Stan Van Gundy, the way he's built teams in the past. I think that he's doing New Orleans a disservice right now, kind of making basketball a little too tough for guys like Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson, just not giving them floor spacing, room to operate. It's a little bit harder for them when there's so many eyes on them at all times. And they moved on from J.J. Redick and Nico Melli, two of their best shooters, honestly, on that roster. Luckily for them, though, this board has fallen out well. Moses Moody, the shooter out of Arkansas, also a guy who can get his shot off in the half court. He proved that a lot this year for the Razorbacks. He goes now 11th overall to New Orleans, and I think that this is a dream scenario for Stan Van Gundy and the Pelicans. They need to find someone who can shoot the ball and shoot it well and shoot it off the dribble, and I think that Moses Moody gives them all of those things here at pick 11.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely think that's kind of the direction that they need to go. They have to get a shooter. They really do. Their spacing is just so bad at this point. At the next selection here, we have the Indiana Pacers, and the Pacers are a team that, they're trying to piece it all together. Um, we're really not certain on what's going to happen with Miles Turner. His name has been floated out there so many different times on where he could potentially go. Do you think that they end up moving him, or what kind of direction do you see the Pacers going in?
Yeah, I think Miles Turner is going to be a guy that plays himself into having a pretty hot market, honestly, on the trade market. Last year, teams weren't willing to take him in. Even the Celtics turned down an offer in a sign-and trade that would have included Gordon Hayward going to Indiana. Now, at this point, Miles Turner's playing similar to a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. He's been very good as a rim protector. I ultimately think he sticks around in Indiana for at least one more season. And here the Pacers are actually going to look at building up some of their defensive backcourt depth, and they're going to go with a player that I really, really like in Davion Mitchell, Jr. out of Baylor. I think that he's the best defensive player in this class. I think that he's got all defense potential in the NBA. He's very, very good at cutting off straight line drives. He's got good feet, good awareness, also very good hands, and he's a tough player. He's also solid in the half court offensively. Look at him taking over that long-term backup point guard spot behind Malcolm Brogdon, whose name also got shopped this deadline a little bit. There was rumors that he could be on the move. Possibly Indiana looks to move on from him, save some money. Davion Mitchell could be the long-term replacement.
I love the fit there with Davion Mitchell to the Indiana Pacers. I think that would be a phenomenal move for them. Obviously, I think Davion Mitchell, after watching him, he's so talented defensively. He definitely can shut down, their best point guard. And, he can play defense on two guards and some three guards, or three threes as well. So I love Davion Mitchell. I think that's a phenomenal fit there. And then we're moving on to pick 13. We have the San Antonio Spurs. And the Spurs, once again, are kind of in a rebuild state. They don't have LaMarcus Aldridge. DeMar DeRozan, his future is very uncertain there. Very likely he won't be back, in my opinion. So do they have to go ahead and replace one of those two losses?
Yeah, they're going to look into the front court for sure. I think that they're taking a long-term approach with this, saying, hey, DeJounte Murray and Lonnie Walker are going to be the guys that we try to build around. We've taken some forwards already with Keldon Johnson, Devin Vassell in recent drafts. Jakob Poeltl they brought back. I think they're looking for a four, and I don't think there's a better player in this class to fit their culture than Zaire Williams, someone who's a ball-moving four, very versatile in the way that he plays basketball. I think he can operate in a variety of different ways. You can put the ball in his hands a little bit. Also, you can have him play off the ball as a cutter. He's got good instincts, honestly, and I think that he would be a great pick here at 13 for the San Antonio Spurs.
Seems like the perfect fit for San Antonio. At pick 14, we have the Golden State Warriors. We're not exactly sure, what their future is. Obviously, Klay Thompson coming back up here, and Kelly Oubre Jr., we're not sure. It's very likely that he's gone after this season. I don't think that relationship's, super great anymore. So do they go ahead and address that wing spot? Because obviously they invested in that front court with James Wiseman last year.
Yeah, this is an interesting spot for the Warriors. Many thought they'd be a playoff team. I think that they've underperformed a little bit. At this point, they are the 9th seed out west. They have a shot to make the playoffs with the play-in game. As we get closer, we'll see how that kind of shapes out here. But now at this point, I think the Warriors are in a position where maybe they just try and take a guy who has very high potential in this class, and that is a player to me out of the NBL, Josh Giddey. Let's see if I can pull him up here in the international pool. I really like what he brings to the table as a passer. He's got great feel for the game. He's a 6'8" point guard. He is going to be one of the best passers in the class, if not the best passer. I believe his last 10 games or so in the NBL, he's averaging about 15, 8, and 8. And he's got a lot of good potential in the NBA. I think a lot of people are going to compare him to Luka Doncic just with the international flair and the fact that he's a guy who is a bigger point guard, can really read the floor. Now, he's not going to be the shot creator that Luka Doncic is. He doesn't even quite have the physical nature of his game where he's going to be able to go downhill, take contact, and finish around the rack. That's the area that he really needs to improve at the most at this point. But I think here Golden State's looking for a guy who can kind of fill that Sean Livingston role that they've been badly missing. I know some people think that maybe they believe in Nico Mannion. Giddey can coexist with Nico Mannion. Mannion a little bit more of a scoring guard who can also facilitate the rock out of the pick and roll. I think Giddey's just an all-around better playmaker and someone who could coexist in an offense very well with Klay Thompson and Steph Curry.
Yeah, I love the fit for the Golden State Warriors. Josh Giddey, a guy that he was considered a second-round pick. You were very vocal about him being, around that lottery range, and people are finally starting to realize how good of a prospect he is. At pick number 15, we have the Hornets, and the Hornets are kind of in an interesting position because they desperately need a center. They need one so bad, but, they tried with Nick Richards, Vernon Carey. So they tried to address that. So maybe they are content with good forwards in PJ Washington and Miles Bridges. So are they going ahead and, maybe looking in the backcourt, or do you think they'll stick in that front court?
Yeah, that front court is probably where they will end up sticking. They're an interesting team because they've really grown in a lot of areas. Gordon Hayward's been a perfect acquisition for this team. Miles Bridges has taken a huge step forward this year. I think LaMelo Ball's really done a good job in opening up his game quite a bit. And even with LaMelo Ball out now for a majority or the remainder of the season, Miles Bridges has still been playing very good basketball. I think that he's kind of earned back some of his confidence that he had, that he's kind of struggled with early on in his career. Now at this point, I'm actually going to opt for Usman Garuba out of Real Madrid. I think that they're going to take a development approach with their roster. They're going to go with the young center who needs a lot of work. He's a project player, like I said before, but he goes 15th overall. I think that Nick Richards could be the short-term answer there, along with Vernon Carey in Charlotte, but maybe Usman Garuba could be the long-term replacement for both of those centers.
At number 16, we have the Oklahoma City Thunder. That's where the pick is going. And the Thunder, once again, they're going to have a lot of picks. They're going to maybe take some risks on some high upside guys. Could you possibly be looking at BJ Boston as an option, a guy that, very well was thought to be, a possible top 5 pick heading into the class prior to the season starting? He has been horrible shooting the ball, but you can definitely tell with his handle and his ability to really hold the rock. I think that this guy has some upside potentially, but the shooting is just absolutely atrocious right now.
Yeah, I'm glad you actually mentioned BJ Boston because that was the direction I was going to take Oklahoma City here. Sam Presti has the opportunity to take risks in this year's class. He already grabbed Jonathan Kamenga here at pick number 5 in this mock draft. Now he comes back, grabs BJ Boston. BJ Boston's a guy who has real shot creating potential. Now the question mark is there, like you mentioned, is he going to be able to knock down those shots? This past year at Kentucky, he really struggled to do so with consistency. But we've seen guys in the past. Cam Reddish struggled a lot in his sole season in college basketball. He struggled with consistency, and he was still a lottery pick. BJ Boston now falls all the way to 16. Oklahoma City pulls the trigger on him here. I think that there's a lot of potential for him as a guy who can handle the ball in the half court, get his shot off. The question mark really becomes, what's his defensive presence, and will he be able to knock those shots down at the next level?
Oklahoma City can definitely take some risks. I really like that selection for them at pick number 16. At 17, we have the Memphis Grizzlies. They have to make a decision. I think that obviously they're going to be looking in that front court at Grayson Allen, DeAndre Melton. I'm not super excited about that front court. Obviously, John Morant's the star there, but do you think they're going to have to address that here?
Yeah, I do think that they have to look at a few different positions here. I think their front court could use some help. They just need some more wing help in general. I think Jonas Valanciunas has played himself into being their long-term starting center. You're looking at this team really missing Jaren Jackson this year as well. I think that's been a big limiting factor for them. I think that they end up actually sticking along the wing position here. And I'm actually looking for Johnny Juzang here. Let's see if I can find him on this board. We haven't seen him quite yet. His name pop up. We're looking for Johnny Juzang. He plays for UCLA, had a really good March Madness. I think he's played himself into a first-round pick in many people's eyes, and he can really shoot the basketball as well. Austin, are you seeing Johnny Juzang on this list at all?
I have not seen him just yet. No.
I have not either. This is the issue with this website too. Sometimes they don't have these players all on here. Let me see if I can find Johnny Juzang. Just a little bit of a struggle here, honestly, with this website.
Which is kind of surprising. They have a good wide variety of prospects, but sometimes some of the more clear and obvious ones aren't on here, and they are not all the time, correctly listed under their position, and sometimes not even their correct year. I know we struggled in some of that last season.
Yeah, this is okay. So we're gonna actually just put Jamie Jaquez here, the UCLA counterpart to Johnny Juzang. But Jaquez is not the pick. I am opting for Johnny Juzang here. at pick 17 just because Juzang is not popping up under the correct class or position at this point. So we are going to put Hawkes here, but remember, guys, that is actually Johnny Juzang who we're going with for the Memphis Grizzlies.
At pick number 18, we have the New York Knicks, which they've taken, tremendous strides. Obviously, Julius Randle has played really well this year. And Obi Toppin, once again, he was their selection last year. We need to see him play a little more before we can start making some overall judgments on that selection. But do they go ahead and try to address that 3 position? Because I think that's probably their biggest need, kind of looking at their depth chart as a whole.
Yeah, they could use another forward for sure at that 3 position. However, at this point, I'm actually going to opt for Franz Wagner. I know he's listed as a small forward on here. He's not going to be that at the NBA level. I think he's going to be a combo 4-5, can play the small ball center. And I think that they opt this direction because of what his defensive presence can be. I think he's got some two-way potential. And he's another guy who's really played his stock up during March Madness. He had a very good run for Michigan, and he's going to capitalize on that now. Goes 18th overall in this mock draft.
At pick 19, we have the Boston Celtics, and obviously Boston had quite a few picks last year that they got to play with. Who do you see them going with at 19?
Yeah, they're going to go here, and they're going to go best player available. That is James Bouknight out of the University of Connecticut. He's a guard that has a lot of different abilities on the basketball floor. He can defend the 1 and 2 position fairly well. He's also an underrated playmaker at that shooting guard position. Very quality slasher, and I think he's able to get his shot off in the half court a little bit better than other people seem to mention about James Bouknight when the conversation turns to him. He's not going to be someone who really turns around a franchise, has any big long-term impacts, but I think he could be a nice rotational wing. We'll see if they can keep Evan Fournier long-term or not, but James Bouknight will look to be the long-term replacement if Evan Fournier is not retained there in Boston.
Yeah, I think that is a very smart pick by the Boston Celtics. Now we have the Atlanta Hawks, and the Atlanta Hawks obviously traded away Rajon Rondo, got Lou Williams back in that deal, but that doesn't affect this draft at all at this point. Obviously, they feel pretty good about the front court that they have. So I guess the decision becomes, it's kind of a weird thing. I mean, do they go for that backup point guard and go with Sharif Cooper? I think that might be the more clear and obvious pick at this point.
Yeah, Sharif Cooper is where I'm going to go at this point, just because of the way that they run their offense. I think that they're going to look for another ball-dominant point guard, someone who can be on the floor and running the offense when Trae Young isn't. Now, Sharif Cooper, I know a lot of people are going to be mad at here saying, oh, ESPN has him ranked here. I don't care where ESPN has him ranked. ESPN is wrong consistently every single year about a lot of different prospects. Just because ESPN has him ranked high doesn't mean he's actually a good player. Go look at his efficiency from 3. Go look at his efficiency from the field. He started out very well, finishing around the rim over 55%, and that number slowly declined throughout the season when competition picked up while he was playing at Auburn. Now, I know a lot of you are going to say, well, Auburn was a lot better when he was playing. Well, of course, he was their best player. But when you're looking at the NBA, he's not going to be the Atlanta Hawks' best player. They're not going to run their entire offense through him. At best, he's going to come in, be a bench player for them early on, and be a complementary piece to Trae Young and someone who can handle the rock for them. Now, he's got really good skills as a ball handler and passer. I think that's really where he finds his niche in the NBA. I think Atlanta's a great situation because they have so many other talented players on that roster already. Guys like Bogdan Bogdanovic, Cam Reddish, John Collins. They've also got a lot of front court depth with Danilo Gallinari and Onyeka Okongwu there that Sharif Cooper can come in, guide that second unit, and that's the best fit for him in this year's draft, in my opinion.
Yep, I think Atlanta is wise to go with Sharif Cooper at this point. Now we have the New York Knicks at this point. They have to make a key decision here. A couple of interesting names still on the board: Josh Christopher, Daishen Nix, Greg Brown III. So a couple of those bigger names still loom around here. Cam Thomas is another one who's a phenomenal scorer out of LSU. What direction do you see the New York Knicks going in?
Yeah, you keep nailing all the picks here, Austin. I'm going with Cam Thomas here, the freshman out of LSU. He averaged 23 points a game, played very well during the tournament, really put the LSU Tigers on his back in their round 1 win over the St. Bonaventure Bonnies. And then he also played very well against Michigan in round 2. At this point, I think that if you're looking at LSU and what they ran through Cam Thomas, this is a good fit for New York. They need someone else who can get their shot off in the half court. Watching the Knicks this year, it's a lot of Julius Randle ISO at the top of the key or off the wing. They need someone else who can get their shot off consistently. and also could function as a good catch and shoot guy. I think Cam Thomas has an underrated skill there just because he wasn't asked to do that very often at LSU. Not a lot of other creators around him. I think he could be a very good catch and shoot guy in the NBA when he's not handling the rock as well.
Absolutely. He was asked to take a lot of tough shots, and he chose to take a lot of tough shots. Hopefully he can kind of smooth that out and just become a more efficient player. Obviously, not everything's going to be, ran through him necessarily, but New York needs a second unit guy that can really take over and score the rock. I think that is Cam Thomas's game. At 22, we have the Houston Rockets. Once again, I'm kind of interested to see where you think the Rockets are going to go. They're in a transition phase here. They definitely could use another front court guy. Where do you think the Houston Rockets are going?
Yeah, the Rockets are very interesting here. Remember, we had them grab Cade Cunningham already in this year's draft. And I think that if you're being honest with yourself, you're probably looking along the front court here, trying to find someone who can be a bench center. We know how much Justin Patton struggled during their 20-game losing streak when Christian Wood was out. That was a big reason why they didn't have quality front court play. And I'm actually going to opt for Luka Garza here. This is the first time I've had him go in our first-round mock drafts. And my reasoning is he's just a very well-rounded, solid player. He's able to get his shot off on the three-point line. He's also pretty polished on the block as well. Now, his potential in the NBA is not going to be extremely high. He's a good player right now. He's a very good college player, and I think he'll stick around in the NBA, but it's not like he's going to ever overturn a franchise, change them completely around. He's going to come in, be a quality rotational center for them early on, which is something they badly need still at this point.
Absolutely. At pick 23, we have the LA Lakers, and once again, the Lakers could be looking potentially at that point guard spot. We are not sure what's going to happen with Dennis Schroeder. There's a lot of controversy surrounding his contract situation. Are they looking at that point guard spot?
Yeah, they are here, and they're actually going to opt for the second Baylor player in this class to go, another junior here, Jared Butler. He played very well throughout March Madness. He played well all year long in Baylor's run to winning the national title. And I think that he's going to be a nice pickup for the Los Angeles Lakers, filling out their backcourt a little bit. He's a defensive-minded guard, can also get his shot off in the half court. I think he struggles a little bit more in that area than others seem to think, though. I think that he's a little bit overrated as an offensive player, especially when his game's going to turn into in the NBA. But all in all, he's going to be a nice rotational piece for the Los Angeles Lakers. They're all about winning right now, and I think Jared Butler is going to have a pretty solid impact on that coming in his rookie season.
Absolutely. And now we have pick 24. Also the Houston Rockets. Once again, they just have a massive amount of picks. Is there any guy that's clear and obvious here?
There's not a lot of clear and obvious at this point for Houston. They've already addressed the backup center spot with Luka Garza, went and got their point guard of the future in Cade Cunningham. Now I think it's about trying to take a swing and miss opportunity, and they're going to opt for Greg Brown. They're going to stay in the state of Texas here. The freshman Longhorn, he played very well at the start of the year. Some people thought he could even be as high as a lottery pick, and then he kind of cooled off as the year progressed, struggled with efficiency in some regards. It also didn't help that Texas got bounced early in March Madness. That kind of limited his growth as a guy in his own draft stock. He didn't get a lot of opportunity to show himself nationally during the tournament, but he goes here 24th overall and fills out the rest of Houston's positional needs at this point in this year's draft.
Absolutely. Moving on to the next pick, we have the Denver Nuggets. Obviously, they feel pretty good about their overall depth. They just keep losing guys. That's what's kind of happening to them. Obviously, you can't afford to pay them all, so they're losing depth guys here and there as the seasons progress. But for Denver, who do you like here?
Yeah, for Denver here, I actually really like the pick of Jaden Springer out of Tennessee. Now, he's another guy who I've got some question marks about efficiency. There's a lot of guys in this year's class that they're falling out of the lottery because I just don't know how often I'm going to see them connect with efficiency from the field, especially in the mid-range game and the three-point area. Jaden Springer, he shot fairly well from three this past year for Tennessee, but he's a guy who kind of fades away sometimes during games, doesn't really leave his impact as often, which I think this works here in Denver. They moved on from RJ Hampton in the trade for Aaron Gordon. And now at this point, I think that if you're looking at this from Denver's perspective, you need to fill in that backcourt a little bit more and find someone who's going to be the long-term replacement for Will Barton, who is entering free agency this offseason.
Yeah, you definitely have to address that with Will Barton on his way out. Now we have pick 26. We have the LA Clippers. Obviously, they've done a really nice job picking up guys like Nicholas Batum to kind of fill out their roster. They addressed last year and got Daniel Oturu in a trade with the Minnesota Timberwolves. Jay Scrubb's another guy that you do like at that shooting guard spot. So kind of interesting to see how this plays out. We're not sure the status of Reggie Jackson moving forward. Obviously, they have Patrick Beverley and Rondo for next year. Terrence Mann's another guy that can also handle the rock. Do you think they're going to take a developmental three at this point?
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm thinking at this point. Last mock draft, before they had acquired Rajon Rondo, we had looked at the point guard spot. We knew that was a position of need for them. But with Rondo under contract through next season, I don't really see them looking at that point guard spot as well. I think that they're actually going to opt for Scotty Lewis, someone who came out of high school pretty hot. And a lot of people really liked what he was going to bring. University of Florida, he didn't necessarily have as great of a year this past year as many would have hoped, faded away in some big games. But he's got some real two-way potential. He's a guy who can also handle the rock a bit and is someone who's willing to give up the ball as well. I think that kind of fits into what the Clippers need. Question mark is Nicholas Batum. Is he going to be back next year, or has he played himself into a player that a lot of other contenders are going to want to bring in as well? I think he's going to actually have a pretty strong market when he hits free agency, probably still on the minimum, but a lot of teams are going to be looking for him. Will the Clippers be able to keep him? I'm not sure yet at this point. Scotty Lewis could be the replacement there for Batum.
Yeah, I don't know the likelihood that they'll be able to retain him. A lot of teams will be after Nicholas Batum. At pick 27, we have the Brooklyn Nets. Obviously, just kind of looking at their depth chart as a whole, I think another wing could be in the fold potentially. Also, that center position is a position of need.
Yeah, it really is. And I think center position in another class, that's probably the direction that they do look to go. However, here at this point, they're going to opt for Josh Christopher, someone who, again, efficiency was the real issue, the real bugaboo there for him out of Arizona State. He was a guy that I thought would probably be a lottery pick when he came out of high school. Just didn't really live up to that this past year with Arizona State. But all in all, I think he's got some real potential as a shot creator. Now, question marks are the efficiency. He shot below 30% from three, shot below 40% from the field, I believe, and he just didn't really find a rhythm. I think giving him some time in Brooklyn, probably letting him play in the G League his rookie season, let him be the lead guy for a roster for a little bit as he continues to grow as a player. He's not going to come in, be a big-time impact player early on for Brooklyn, but maybe they're looking at a long-term approach to this, saying, hey, James Harden, Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant aren't going to be around forever. Let's see if we can start some of the development process ahead of time so we never really bottom out.
Absolutely. Josh Christopher is the pick. At 28, we have the Philadelphia 76ers. Again, at this point, they could be looking at that three spot. Thibauld's a nice player. I'm not sure about Danny Green long-term, how we're feeling about that. So, I mean, they have some options for sure. I think three could be the one that they're looking at.
Yeah, I think so as well. Now, the one thing here is Philadelphia probably won't own this pick actually on draft night. Daryl Morey hasn't made a first-round selection as an executive since the year 2015. So I would be surprised if they do own this pick. But if they do, they would opt for actually, I would assume, to hear someone who's a little bit versatile, can play the 1 through 3 in my estimation. Probably best suited as a 2 or 3 in the NBA. I don't think he's necessarily going to have the ball skills to be someone who's going to be a long-term 1. But that fits perfectly here for them. He's going to be someone who brings in effort, brings in some defensive presence as well. And he's just a gamer. I think that he's fallen a little bit in this mock draft, falling all the way to 28. And they just go best player available here with, I would assume, new.
Love that pick for them. At pick 29, we have the Phoenix Suns. The Phoenix Suns have taken tremendous strides this season, obviously find themselves second in the West as it currently stands. Really like what they've been able to do. Chris Paul was a huge addition for them. Now, how can they kind of complement what they've already built? I think that backup point guard spot is a definite concern.
It definitely is for me. I just don't think Cameron Payne is that good of a player in the NBA. I think that, Phoenix has enough of the infrastructure around him where Cameron Payne is actually playing at an okay level this year. But I think someone who would be an immediate improvement would be Daishen Nix out of G League Ignite. I love what he brings. He uses his body well. He's very smart with his positioning, a very good floor general already at this point. And he's a little bit bigger of a guard, and I don't think there's a better player for him to learn from than Chris Paul. I think that he's got a lot of the similar characteristics that Chris Paul has when you look at the two of them, how they operate the pick and roll game as facilitators first, scorers second. And I think Daishen Nix would love to land in Phoenix, learn from Chris Paul. Now, Nix is never going to be a player like Chris Paul. He's not going to reach that caliber. But as a playmaker, he reads the floor well, and I think he can manipulate a pick and roll a lot better than other guards in this class can.
Yeah, I think for the Suns, it's really important to get that backup point guard spot kind of shored up. And now we have 30. Once again, another surprise team. The Utah Jazz have been absolutely phenomenal. Despite not changing a lot of things in the offseason, they look like a completely different team. A lot of that stems from the play from their stars, obviously, in Gobert and Mitchell, but Mike Conley has made some really nice contributions as well.
Yeah, Mike Conley has played a lot better this year. I also think Bojan Bogdanovic is a big reason why they've been able to succeed this year as well. Just having him back, they didn't have him in the bubble last year. They almost upset the Denver Nuggets last year in the bubble. Without Bojan, they weren't able to pull it off, but he's been a good contributor for them. And I think that they actually look for another shooter to fill up that front court. Matthew Hurt here out of Duke, is the selection here. He can space the floor. I think he's a solid option for them as a long-term piece. Now at pick 30, you're not going to find someone who's going to be probably a long-time game changer, but he fits well into what they already have on this roster. Probably look for him to be the Royce O'Neal replacement long-term there in Utah.
Absolutely. And that's going to conclude our NBA mock draft. Thank you so much for tuning in. We had a lot of fun doing this, and we are going to continue to make more and more mock drafts as we progress towards the NBA draft. So hopefully you did enjoy the video. Subscribe to the channel if you like NBA draft content. Also, leave a like to show your support for what we are doing here, and we cannot wait to see you guys in our very next video.